everybody, it's me, Margaret, and last time I filmed the video, I went ahead and filmed some finished objects, but I didn't include them because the video was getting too long. So today, let me start with that clip, and then I want to take you over to see a larger finished object that I want to talk a little bit more about. And I did finish this hat. This was a knit crate pattern. It was pretty simple. It was this knit pattern. I used the knit crate yarn as well, not this. I don't know what that was. And it turned out great. It was very easy, very simple. I did a smaller size. Loved the pattern. Of course, it's a paid-for pattern. Anybody can get knit crate patterns. It's just that if you're not a member, therefore the patterns will be paid for. But they're available to everybody. And then I can't remember if I showed you this one or not. This is one that I did. It's a crochet, again, with knit crate yarn. This was the yarn that I dyed myself, and I have a video where I went through that process. I know that I do not want to be a yarn dyer, though I did enjoy the process. Don't get me wrong, it was fun, but it's not something that I'm passionate about like some other people are, but I really loved using this yarn. It is a #1 yarn, and I think I showed this to you. I love the way it came out. It is crocheted. It is a, was this a cluster stitch hat? I don't know. I will remember it's a bee-hooked crochet pattern. She actually gave you the pattern with a different size yarn, a different weight yarn, but it's simple to change and do with any kind of yarn that you want to, and it came out beautifully. So I really like that. And of course, I'll put that in the description box below. And then I did this with Lion Brand Heartland yarn. In this gorgeous color. This is the color I used to do that cardigan last winter time. The color is called Redwood. All right, let's talk about this. Let me explain. This knit hat is a mock cable pattern. You don't have to use a cable needle or any advanced techniques. It's very simple. Now, I have done something almost exactly like this before, but it was from a paid-for pattern called the Phoenix hat. And what I would do is only the bottom portion, and then when it changed, the pattern changed to a more complicated top up here, and I would just ignore that and continue on with the cabling up to the top with some decreases. But I never was able to share that with people because they would have to buy that pattern, and then they wouldn't know what I did because you know how that goes. So I was looking around and I stumbled across a pattern that looked very similar, and it is, the technique is similar to that mock cable of the Phoenix hat. Not exactly the same. And I thought, oh, this is great, free pattern. This is something that I actually could share with everyone, including the way they do the decreases at the top. If you have got the basics down with knitting and purling and all, this would be a good one to move to for your next learning skill, if you know what I'm talking about. It's not advanced, it's maybe not even intermediate, but it does give you some of the next stage stitches that you would need to move into. So master your knit, master your purl, and master knitting in the round, and then give this a go. Actually, you probably need to do some hats and decreases before you step into this one, but it's good. But the name of this hat is called Mock Cable Spring Hat by CC Knits, and I'll put that in the description box below. Highly recommend it. It was a good one. Wait, detailed-oriented people may notice that I did this hat with a #4 worsted, but both patterns I showed called for fingering weight yarn. Now, I've done this hat in all weights of yarn, and I totally forgot to mention it. It's easy to do, and I explain it in this video, which, of course, I'll link below. So that brings me to this project. Sarah Zimmerman of Repeat Crafter Me is one of my favorite crochet designers, and I got the urge to do a corner-to-corner in something bright and springy using only the yarn that I had on hand. Okay, so here's the finished project, or the finished object, I guess we normally say. It's cute as a button, but it is kind of wrinkly like that, and I feel like if I get it wet and give it a tug here and there that I could let it block out properly. I don't know, so we're going to try it out. Well, it's somewhat better, but it's still not quite the way I would like it. I think if I were to do this again, I would probably go up a hook size when attaching this, because this is clearly pulling up. I don't know if you can tell from this angle. These pull in and these are pulling in. So there's that. Now, I did not like the fact that it was not soft. I had just washed it, pulled it out of the washer, and it did seem to lie flat a little bit better, but it was still that stiff acrylic feel that you get from inexpensive acrylic. So I tossed it in the dryer. Now it's soft as it can be, but it went right back to its original pulled. Don't you think it looks like that? I feel like when I joined all this, it somehow pulled everything in. I don't know. That's me talking. I really don't know what the answer is. But now that it's soft, I think I may be able to wet it again and pull it out maybe a little bit more. I don't know. Now, every year for the past several years, I have this perpetual goal of trying to, how do I phrase this? Use more yarn than I buy. I don't want to say that I'm on a yarn freeze, because I still want the freedom to buy yarn if the feeling strikes. But I do know that I have a lot of yarn that needs to be used up. So I want to try to create whatever I create by using what I already have, if possible. And that's exactly what I did with this blanket. So essentially, I would call this an exceptional scrap project. Let me tell you why. Now, what we have here is most of the yarn that I used in this. You'll see no red, and that's because I happened to use up all of a little small amount of red that I had right here, so it's not there. And the same thing for this blue. It was just, you know, a little small ball, and it turned out wonderfully. Notice that black is only for one of the dots, just the eye, so you didn't need much of that at all. So I just pulled off of this thing right here. But what about this, the background? Oftentimes when I find a project that I want to do, it's usually the colors that the designer chose that I'm really drawn to. And so I really would love to go out and buy the exact yarn that the designer used. But of course that does not go with my goal. So trying to stay with my goal, I had to say, what can I substitute? Now, in the case of Repeat Crafter Me, Sarah Zimmerman, she is the master of color choice, I think, and she chose a bright blue for the background of the birds. Think about it, sky blue, birds in the sky. Doesn't that make a lot of sense? So I wanted to do that too, but I didn't have that. So that's how I ended up with this sort of aqua blue. And I think it worked okay. But here's where a goal like using the yarn that you already have can lead to creativity. All right. I had enough to do the 4 backgrounds in this color. I only had this much left, but there was a couple of more steps. You have to go around each of the squares in this color, and I did not have enough to go around twice on every one of these squares. So I stopped with the last round, and that would have been right here. Can you see that I substituted this lighter yarn? Let's see if you can see the difference in color right here. And it's not that noticeable, but where I used it, it's really not that big of a deal. You see how it's just on the inside, right against the gold of each one of the squares. So it's almost like a purposeful designer choice. I really don't think somebody would notice it if they're just glancing at the project like this, but if they do, it's just not that big of a deal. You know, something I really love are the puff stitches that she put on the edge. They're tulips. Can you tell they're flowers? You see how they have little green stems and they seem to be planted in the dirt? I mean, I guess that's planted in the dirt. I don't know. It's just a brown border that's above and below the tulips, which I really like. Kind kind of looks like two different colors from here, but it isn't. I think that's just the lighting somehow. The yarn that I used for that and for the background color here, it's Hirschner's Worsted 8, and I have said on numerous occasions that this is not my favorite yarn. I really don't recommend it, even though you can get it at a really good price. It was like $1 a skein because it was a huge sale. I don't enjoy working with it. It's kind of like a Red Heart Super Saver, but worse in my opinion. But in its defense, it washes up beautifully. It is nice and soft, and so that's a plus. This has been washed and dried, and this hasn't. And I would love it if I could say to you, look, can you see the difference in the strands of yarn? But I can't. I really can't. But it really does feel considerably different. Strangely enough, all of these acrylics worked really, really well together. This is Hirschner's Worsted 8. I use this on several different areas. I used this Premier Basics. I used Vanna's Choice. This red right here is Red Heart Super Saver, but of course I don't have it here. This orange is Red Heart Super Saver. What is this? I don't even remember. Oh, that's another Hirschner's Worsted 8. I used this on the outside, but the green here for this bird was Loops and Threads Impeccable. And that's a good one to work with. Then the beaks were all this Pound of Love. Now, strangely enough, this Pound of Love calls itself a number 4 worsted, but it works up considerably thinner than the other yarns when you're working with it. So I would use, like, instead of 3 half double crochets in one square, I would do 4 just to make up the difference. So all in all, they play well together, so that's good to know. Now I'm going to stick with my original observation that I think if I were to do this again, I would use a larger hook size to join the squares together, because I feel like I did it too tightly. I'm not very good at using one hook size and crocheting, more loosely than I did before. So I would literally have to change hook sizes if I wanted to make it looser. But keep that in mind if you were to do this project, that you don't want to get too tight when you join the 4 squares together. Now, something that we haven't talked about but is a glaring mistake to me, and that's this. Can you see where I messed up? The little birds are supposed to have white tummies, but this little bird lost a feather or something, I don't know, but I messed up right here. I could go over that with some white if I wanted to kind of duplicate stitch over it. It doesn't bother me that bad though. Now here's another thing. Technically speaking, corner to corner is reversible. So the pattern that you're following is the same for all 4 of the birds. For example, let's look at this blue bird right here. His beak looks pretty good right here, as in it's supposed to be 3 squares. But on the back side, you can see his beak does not look so great. Another thing to notice is more apparent on this orange one, on the lighter colors where the contrast is greater. Do you see how this little bird looks like his feathers are kind of spiky right here? But if you flip him over, it doesn't look that way. The spikes are actually coming in from the blue. And so that's what happens when you have to flip it over, which is, again, not a big deal, and I don't think the casual observer would have noticed anything like that. So basically what I did was made 4 identical birds, and then I flipped the ones on this side so that they would, be facing each other. I don't know if there's a better way to do that, but that's what I did. And I just want to throw out that I did use my little organizer here. I'm going to link the video below where my husband Tucker and my older son Tyler made this for me. It has all the information on where we found the instructions and everything in that particular video if you are interested. I can see where it would be really handy if I had a whole lot of colors. But the way in which this is done, you only had 1, 2, 3, 4 colors at a time when you were doing it, and I just kind of found it easier just to switch things around while I was sitting there. It was not that big of a deal. But this is incredibly advantageous. I can see how, if you had a whole lot of colors going, oh, that one's tight, why it would be pretty handy dandy to have something like this. That, you know, I have more that I could use here. But anyway, I pulled it out but didn't actually use it that much. So still a good idea. Now, if you read Sarah's blog post where she gives you the instructions for making this blanket, she'll make mention of the fact that she had intended to make this a bigger blanket. And she was going to do that simply by creating more bird squares and then joining them together. So that gives you more control. This is a small blanket. It's fine for, say, a car seat or a stroller or something like that. Or maybe even a wall hangings of some sort. But it's nice to know that you have control when you do the corner-to-corner squares and join them like that. You could make it more rectangular if you wanted, or even bigger square, or whatever. The birds could all be the same size. Oh, and she also offers a bird house, which would have been a really cute one to add here in the corner too as well. So I just thought this was fun. I guess you can tell I'm kind of looking forward to spring. And that's why I was doing that. But I do have a work in progress going on, but I have to go downstairs and get it. This is a knit along with Erin, Everyday Erin. I'll put a link to her video below where she introduced it. The name of the pattern is called Lars and the Real Girl, apparently based on some Netflix show that I have not seen. So I can't tell you what it's about. But anyhow, I really do like the pattern, and it's good for, I think it's good for a beginner. There's some good skills that you can learn besides just knitting and purling. When you're ready to move on, you got knitting and purling down, you're ready to move on, this would be a good pattern to start with. It is a little bit difficult to fix mistakes, which I did make at one point, but I ripped back and everything is good. So the yarn I'm using is this Debbie Bliss Cotton DK. Got it on sale from Love Crafts, really good price a while back, with the intent of making that sweater I showed you last time, but forgot that I was doing that. So this is perfect for it. Now you don't have to do this pattern in DK weight yarn, which I think is what it calls for. That will make it a baby size. Erin happens to be doing it in a bulky weight yarn, so, and it's coming out great, by the way. So if you're interested in that and the information she provides, then I'll link that below. Now, I'm really bad about doing knit-alongs or crochet-alongs the proper way because I work on things when the inspiration hits me. Usually in the evening when I'm sitting down to watch TV and stuff like that is when I want to knit or crochet. But recently I've had some health tests and a couple of procedures and things like that, so I was kind of down for the count. So I actually started this long before, like a week before Erin actually began the process. She has a little schedule that you can print if you want to, where you can keep up and do it along with her, so that it helps you to stay on track and get to a finished object. And look, I understand this because I am famous for working on something and not finishing it. I don't do it a lot, but I will say that there's probably about 20% of the projects that I start I don't finish for various reasons. It could be that I just no longer like it. It could be that the yarn I'm using, I don't like it, or else it's just not fitting well with that particular project. And I feel like life is too short to work on something you're not enjoying. But if you're a person who just gets sidetracked easily, I think having a schedule and a routine would be very helpful. So she's got this little calendar, and you can print it out if it works for you, and you can follow along like that. And then she gives updates too on how she's progressing with that as well. Me, I started it and then I shoved it aside and wanted to do that crochet project. So I worked on exclusively on my birds. And I did enjoy doing this, but I can't tell you, I don't know how to explain my thought process. It's like I'm working along on something and all of a sudden I'll get the urge to do a crochet project. And so I'll have to put that aside. And then while I'm crocheting, I may all of a sudden get the urge to do a knitted project. So usually I have a couple of things on the needles or the hooks. I'm not one of those people who starts 5,000. Because I'll never finish those if I do that. I really lose heart on that. And as a matter of fact, when I was searching out colors, I did find a project that is unfinished that I need to finish. And look, here it is. This is a hitchhiker scarf by Martina Bem. I'm just remembering this off the top of my head. Can you see the little spikes on it, the little teeth? This is probably in every knitter's toolbox. A very popular scarf pattern. Why? Because it's awesome for beginners. Not to mention the fact that it's also awesome for just about anybody to wear. I am a very small person. I am 5'2", about 115 pounds right now. If I try to wear a regular scarf, I look ridiculous. The scarf wears me. Does that make sense? They're just too big for me. So things like this, which are thinner, are things I can actually get away with, which I enjoy. This is awesome yarn. It's a sock yarn, I remember that much. I think it's one of the Knit Crate yarns. I am not positive on that, but it's beautiful. And I don't have the label. I didn't save the label, don't know what I did with it. So I only have this much more yarn to go, just that much. So I'm almost finished with it. But I tell you something that is risky about putting off projects for a long time like this, and that is that your gauge could change. So I'm really interested to see if I pick this back up, is my gauge the same? I don't know, but I do want to finish it. It's a really nice project, both in doing and wearing, so I should do it. So that's all I've got to talk about today, and thank you for giving me some time to pull myself away from the news, because with this Ukraine situation going on and being a military mom, you can understand that sometimes it's all encompassing. So I am going to sign off now, and I thank you for hanging out with me, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.